Hello YouTube family, thanks for joining me on my videos. If you like the videos, please give me a like. If you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to help the channel grow. Thanks for watching the videos. Sincerely, thanks for watching. Hello, thanks for joining me on this video. Let's dive right in, and this video is dealing with the current fight in Congress over the two supposed infrastructure bills. You have the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed last month in the Senate, and that was the $1.2 trillion bipartisan bill, supposedly bipartisan, and the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. As the Democrats have explained, the plan was to put both bills through simultaneously, and that's the way progressives in the House wanted it. They have so far stood their ground. Hopefully they will continue to stand their ground, as they have said they will not vote yes on the bipartisan infrastructure bill until the reconciliation bill passes the Senate, and where they can vote on both bills simultaneously. And they have stood up to their word to say that as long as both bills pass the Senate, they have no problem signing both bills. Right now you have a situation where right-wing Democrats and a number of people in the corporate news media are trying to gaslight the American people on exactly what's going on here. You have, even Chris Cuomo on CNN had gone on a diatribe claiming that progressives were threatening to derail the president's agenda, his legislative agenda, which is untrue. What Chris Cuomo was saying is straight out just untrue. That is a gaslighting of his viewers to frame it that way. And so we have the hard infrastructure bill that passed the Senate. That is a bill that is dealing with roads, bridges. It includes things like broadband access to rural areas, which need expanded broadband access. And as far as the broadband access, that overwhelmingly will benefit Republican voters, because so much of rural America votes Republican overwhelmingly. So that part of the bipartisan bill will benefit primarily Republican voters. So the Democrats aren't in any way trying to leave anybody out. The reconciliation bill, which includes a lot more stuff, which includes child care so women can go to work and not have to pay a large percentage of their pay for child care. It includes stuff like elder care. It includes climate change initiatives. It includes a much broader array of things we need. As far as the climate change stuff goes, that's stuff we needed a decade ago, 15, 20 years ago, and we're just trying to get it now. You have people in the Senate, like Manchin and Sinema, who are saying the price is too high. The $3.5 trillion is too high, which is laughable, because they have no problem constantly increasing the Department of Defense budget, which, this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, that's $3.5 trillion to be spent over 10 years. The $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that's already passed the Senate, that's over 10 years. Over a 10-year period, over the next 10 years, we're going to spend over $8 trillion on the Department of Defense budget. $8 trillion. And that's not based on the budget now. That's based on the fact that it continues to go up. If the budget, what it is right now, I think it's going to be slightly short, a bit shy of $8 trillion over 10 years, but it's going to go up over the next 10 years. It'll be well over $8 trillion by the time we get 10 years down the road. And everything, as I've tried to explain, with regard to politics, is a matter of priorities. What do you prioritize? Do you prioritize putting hundreds of billions of dollars into the pockets of defense contractors? Or do you prioritize investing money into average working Americans so they can get by easier and have a better life, a better outlook for the future? I mean, at a time when you have people whining about not enough people to go out and fill jobs, it's asinine that you're saying we can't spend money on universal child care for working women, for working parents, whether it's a woman or a man. But the elder care, anyone who has ever had a relative who has gotten old and needed to be taken care of, very vital. The wealthier of us can afford to pay for elder care. A lot of working families, they don't have the money and they don't have the time. If you have a single person or a couple who is working full time and has an elderly mother or father or grandparent who needs to be taken care of, who needs somebody watching after them, they don't have the time because they're spending so much of their time working. If you have a working couple with jobs and kids, the time isn't there. In most cases, for average middle class, working, poor people, the money's not there. And for us to be a society that says we don't really care about our elderly, that's a sad state for our society to be in. So what's in this bill is extremely vital, and it comes to the question of what is infrastructure. You've had Republicans arguing against it, that this stuff isn't infrastructure. But to say that roads and bridges are infrastructure, but the human beings who do the work day in and day out in this country are not infrastructure, is insane. That's a ignorant look on infrastructure, a perspective I will never get on board with. But this video is pertaining to how it's being framed now, because right now you have a bipartisan bill that's passed the Senate, sitting in the House waiting to be voted on. You have still the committees putting together the actual language of the reconciliation bill to figure out what's going into it, what's not going into it. Things like they've already, it looks like, cut out the having Medicare negotiate drug prices across the board in this country, which was one of the pay-fors in the bill that Kristen Sinema and her ilk got behind and said they would not support. Kristen Sinema, who is heavily funded by pharmaceutical companies, her campaigns, is not willing to let that happen, where the federal government negotiates down drug prices so that drug prices are lower for all Americans. That was part of the bill. And I mean, if you did a poll and ask Americans, I don't care if Democrat, Republican, Independent, and ask them if they would prefer higher drug costs or lower drug costs, you're not going to find somebody saying, I want to pay more for pharmaceuticals. That's not going to happen. And so for Kristen Sinema to claim she's looking out for the people of Arizona, she absolutely isn't. Kristen Sinema ran as a very progressive left-leaning Democrat when she was running for her Senate position. In actual practice, as a sitting senator, she has been very right of center and refusing to go along with a majority of the Democrat Party's agenda, let alone progressive. What she did was she played a bait and switch on the people of Arizona. They thought they were voting for a progressive. They were voting for a right-wing Democrat. That's what she's turned into in practice in the Senate. She claims she wanted all these things. Now in the Senate, she is absolutely standing up and saying no to all these things she claims she wanted when she was running. She baited and switched on the people of Arizona, and they absolutely, I hope, they look at that and vote her out of office. But with this current fight, you have a group of 9 right-wing Democrats in the House, and those are these folks: Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, Caroline Bordeaux of Georgia, Philemon Villa of Texas, Jared Golden of Maine, Henry Queller of Texas, Vicente Gonzalez of Texas, Ed Case of Hawaii, Jim Costa of California, and Kurt Schrader of Oregon. And they're calling themselves something like the Problem Solvers Caucus, or whatever they're calling themselves, as they try to fight against the reconciliation bill. You have the bipartisan bill already ready to be voted on in the House. This group pushed Nancy Pelosi to set a deadline to have the vote. That deadline is coming this Monday, the 27th of September. That is absolutely a magic number. It's just an arbitrary date that was given over a month ago to hold a vote on this bill, on the 2 bills. And the point of this group of Democrats was their bill's ready to go. They are very right-wing Democrats. They are very much people who have already sold out to corporations. This group you're looking at the names of, they work for their large donors. That's it. They don't work for their constituents in the states they're from. They don't work for the American people. They don't work for America. They work solely for their large donors. That's the group you're looking at. They are very much right-wing Democrats. And if you have a linear perspective of politics, which doesn't really work because this is very fluid, but for the sake of this discussion, let's say you have on the right side is Republican, on the left side is Democrat, right in the middle is centrist between Democrat and Republican. People like Manchin and Sinema, people like Coons in the Senate from Delaware, people like this group of 9 in the House, they are Democrats who are very much on the right side of that center line. It's a matter of perspective on how far right of center you think they are, but I view them as basically moderate Republicans. They are somewhere between right and center, right there in the Republican side. And they have absolutely already sold out to corporate interest. As a matter of survival, I guess you could say, corporate media also is sold out to corporations because they depend on corporate money for advertising on their television news shows. So they also have a particular interest in supporting the corporatist agenda. And what these 9 and people like Manchin and Sinema are trying to do is force the House to go ahead and vote yes, pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Because once it gets passed, there will be a large amount of Democrats in the House, right-wing Democrats in the House, right-wing Democrats in the Senate, who have no desire to hold a vote on the reconciliation bill. The reconciliation bill basically now is a budget bill that includes a lot of the budget going forward for Biden. And the way the news media is starting to portray this, certain folks in corporate news media, including CNN, MSNBC, people you think are Democrat, you ask people, they would say MSNBC, CNN, that's Democrat news or whatever. They might call it Democrat propaganda, which isn't true. There certainly may be people on those networks who are very Democrat Party supporting and who at times, possibly all the time, passes propaganda. But they have a very corporate interest because of advertising they need for their shows. And they are starting to, this group of Democrats, they're advertising them as centrists. They're nowhere close to centrists as far as being centrist in the Democrat Party. Even centrist between the two parties. They're very much right of center. That's my perspective. Just putting that out there so you know where I'm coming from. They are very much right of center, and they very much have an interest in pushing the agenda their donors want, not so much what Americans want. The $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, very popular among the population, not so popular among corporations, among the very wealthy, because part of the pay-fors in that is to raise the corporate tax back up, not to where it was, not anywhere close to where it was, but to increase it and to increase taxes on people making over $400,000 per year. And one thing we know very clearly is the rich don't want to pay taxes. They pay, as it is, a very low effective tax rate in this country, as do corporations. And in some cases, the richest people in the country pay zero taxes, and some of the wealthiest corporations also pay zero taxes. But you have people in the news media, including Chris Cuomo recently, who tried to frame this as progressives are blocking Biden's agenda by refusing to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, waiting for the reconciliation bill to get completed, going through committee so it can be voted on in the Senate, passed, and then brought to the House so both bills can be passed at the same time. And I want to make clear, if the bipartisan bill passes in the House, it's already passed the Senate, if it passes in the House, most likely we will not get the reconciliation bill. That bill will be dead because the corporatist Democrats have gotten what they wanted and Republicans have gotten what they wanted to stop Biden from passing anything of substance, which is what their agenda is. Mitch McConnell just said it yesterday, that their job, he sees his job as the Republican leader in the Senate, is to stop Biden from getting anything done, which should be so un-American, so unpatriotic to everybody. I don't care who you vote, how you vote party-wise. That should be so un-American to say that my job as a legislator is to make sure that nothing gets done. That's insane to me. But that's the perspective of the leader in the Republican leader in the Senate, is to try and make sure nothing gets passed. I have a group of videos to play. We'll work our way through that and continue this discussion.
I want to thank a group of senators, Democrats and Republicans, for doing what they told me they would do. The death of this legislation was mildly premature, as reported. They said they're willing to work in a bipartisan manner, and I want to thank them for keeping their word. That's just what they did. After years and years of infrastructure week, we're on the cusp of an infrastructure decade. that I truly believe will transform America. As you all know, just a short while ago, the United States Senate passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the very legislation I ran on when I announced my candidacy for the nomination for president.
And that was after the $1 trillion bipartisan bill passed in the Senate. Joe Biden rushed in front of cameras to announce it, that they had done this great thing. I don't know why Democrats are so infatuated with claiming bipartisanship, that they've got a bill, they've got legislation that is bipartisan. I mean, this $1 trillion infrastructure bill had, I believe it was around 19 Republicans in the Senate vote for it. It's looking like there will be no Republicans vote for it in the House. It doesn't need any Republicans in the House to vote for it to pass. It's already passed the Senate. That was the more difficult place. The House, the Democrats have enough of a majority. They can pass this bill without any Republicans voting for it. And it's looking like there will be no Republicans in the House that will vote for it. You will have very few, if any. So most likely, the 19 Republicans who voted for this in the Senate are the only Republicans who will vote for this bill. And I did a previous video on this. It was maybe 2 months ago, when before they ever got this bill, the $1 trillion bill passed, when they were talking about both of them. As I said in that video, the thing I expected most likely to happen is that we get nothing. Is that you have the right wing of the Democrat Party who want to pass some watered down corporate handout bipartisan bill. They don't want to pass the larger reconstruction bill or a reconciliation bill. And progressives, as I was saying then, I was hoping they would stand their ground and refuse to pass the one without the other. And it looks like they're doing that so far. They are standing up that way. And my prediction then was that the most likely scenario is we get nothing. Both bills fail. However, as I said then, I'm saying now, if Democrats in the House pass the bipartisan bill, most likely we're not getting the reconciliation bill. Joe Manchin, as you see here to my left, it's pictured with AOC, has already said we need to push the reconciliation bill off till 2022. Let's deal with that next year or later, which is insane. But that's the perspective of the right-wing conservative Democrats. And the next video is talking about the just people in the news talking about the two bills.
Politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza joining us now. So, Chris, I know you just wrote, if this fails, right, if the president fails this week, his entire domestic agenda is essentially done for at least 15 months.
Yeah, Erica, there's the stakes. It's hard to overstate the stakes here. So between the $1 trillion infrastructure, hard infrastructure, as they call it, bill that's passed the Senate but not yet passed the House, and then the $3.5 trillion budget bill, you essentially have everything that Joe Biden is trying to do, certainly on the domestic front, from immigration to climate to education to coronavirus and dealing with it, all wrapped up in these two bills. I mean, it's not that surprising. It's, almost $1 trillion, in government spending. But if it doesn't go, if this agreement between Democrats doesn't come together, there's a real issue here because there's no plan B. There's no other bill that they can go to. They could maybe try to break it into parts, but this is the bill. This is the effort. And the issue is that once we turn the page to 2022, Now you start talking about the midterm elections, and even Democrats are more wary of voting for something with this sort of price tag on it the closer you get to the election.
I want to bring in now Manu Raju as well. So Manu, as we look at all of this, I mean, this standoff, as Chris said, you really can't overstate the importance of the moment that we're in and what it means for any future potential legislative moves. I wonder, too, though, with so much finger pointing, I mean, is there a sense that there's an end game here, right? Especially as we heard from Congressman Jayapal this morning on New Day saying, it's other people pointing at moderates who are holding all of this up. They're the ones who want you to end up with nothing. It's not us.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some point, one side or the other is going to have to give on this negotiation. The progressives, they're not going to be able to get what they want. Their demand is that they want to see this larger bill to expand the social safety net pass both chambers of Congress by Monday, the same date that infrastructure package has already passed the Senate. That $1.2 trillion plan is expected to get a vote in the House that day. That's not going to happen. There's no possible way the larger package can pass Congress by then. They still don't have an agreement among themselves about what exactly that looks like. But perhaps if they give and suggest that maybe they make progress towards finalizing a deal on that larger package, will that be enough for the progressives to say, okay, we can essentially vote for this infrastructure plan on Monday, let it go into law because we have some assurances that the larger plan may eventually become law? That's a question. There's a question that Democrats, the progressives, ultimately are going to have to make a decision here on what to do. And will the moderates, will they agree, perhaps if they need more time to have a vote on the infrastructure package, delay it beyond Monday, perhaps do it later next week, have a vote later next week, or maybe even a couple weeks because they need more time to get the larger bill done? Will they give? And that is the big question for Pelosi. When I asked her last night if she has concerns that the progressives may tank this, she said, we'll cross those bridges when they come, indicating a lot more negotiation needs to be had between now and then.
So that was a group on CNN talking about the fight over the two bills. Manu Raju was saying the progressives cannot get what they want. And everybody's pointing to this date of this coming Monday, September 27th, as the date the two bills are supposed to be voted on, which was an arbitrary date that was set by Pelosi to appease this group of 9 right-wing Democrats in the House. And even in the chyron there, it was talking about progressives versus moderate Democrats. Here on the screen, you see this Wall Street Journal article that was dealing with this issue, calling them Democratic centrist. Pelosi versus the Democratic centrist. There's nothing centrist about these Democrats. They are very right-wing Democrats. They aren't centrists. They aren't moderates. They're very right-wing. And what they're trying to do is get the corporate handout bill passed so they can completely forget about the rest of it. And Pramila Jayapal, the next 2 videos, one is Jayapal, one is Ayanna Pressley, both explaining the progressive position that what the progressives are standing up for is Biden's agenda, the agenda Biden claimed to have.
Pramila Jayapal, thank you very much for being with us. You have laid down what's been described as an ultimatum that unless the Senate passes this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, you and the other members of the Progressive Caucus will not support the infrastructure legislation, which we know there is support for in both parties. Why not?
Well, Judy, thanks so much for having me on. The key here is we are willing and able and ready to vote for both bills that deliver the entirety of the president's agenda to his desk. That is both the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill. But the agreement was made in the Senate. And in fact, just today, 11 senators put out a statement saying that the only reason they voted for the bipartisan bill out of the Senate was because they had a commitment that the reconciliation reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill would continue to be tied together, and that we would not pass the bipartisan bill until the reconciliation bill was passed. We are sticking to that agreement. That is actually something we've said for the last 3 months, and a majority of our members feel strongly that we can't allow one piece to go forward, the roads and bridges, which is important, but a much smaller package, and then not allow child care to go forward, not allow paid leave, not allow people to have affordable housing, not to take on climate change. Those are the things that are in the Build Back Better Act that are the president's agenda, the Democratic agenda that we ran on. So we have been very clear that we are ready, willing, and able to vote for both bills, but first we need to pass the reconciliation bill, and then we will vote for the infrastructure bill.
But as you know, Congresswoman, moderate members of your party are calling this, I mean, one of them used the term political grandstanding. They say that you are at least within shouting distance of getting that bipartisan infrastructure bill, but you're jeopardizing that because of the demands you're making about the larger bill.
Well, I would just say respectfully to my colleagues, there was an agreement made, and because people wanted to grandstand, they put an artificial date of Monday, September 27th on the table to vote for both these bills. Now, we have not gotten the entirety of the reconciliation package determined, and so we need a little bit more time. There's nothing specific about Monday, September 27th. Why wouldn't we just continue the work to get these bills both done, make sure the reconciliation bill is agreed to, and then we'll all happily vote for both. But the reality is, if you remember, the bipartisan infrastructure bill was supposed to be done 3 months before it got done, but it kept taking longer and longer. So why is it that we allowed that to go forward with more time? But now when it comes to the reconciliation bill, about 70% of the priorities, meaning that women can go back to work and get child care and paid leave and health care for everybody in community college, all these critically important things, that suddenly there's an arbitrary date of Monday the 27th. Let us finish our work. Monday is an arbitrary date. Let's finish our work and let's get both bills to the president's agenda, because this is the Democratic agenda.
So that was Pramila Jayapal, a member of the House. She is the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and she was explaining that what this reconciliation bill is the president's agenda. I mean, if you remember, Joe Biden came into office with Biden, other Democrats, people in the news media claiming he had this FDR 2.0, New Deal 2.0 kind of a robust agenda, that he was going to make this great, massive change. It was going to be great for people, great for America. And so far, it has not come to fruition. There is one major piece of legislation that Joe Biden passed, and that was the COVID relief package. Early on, I mean, it took way too long for that to get done. But that's the only major piece of legislation Joe Biden has gotten passed, and we're now 8 months, a little over 8 months into his first year in office. And that's all he's accomplished. Next year, it's very likely Democrats will lose the House and most likely the Senate in the midterm elections. At that point, Joe Biden's first term is over. Republicans are not going to let him pass anything of substance because, as Mitch McConnell said, their job is to make sure nothing gets done in hopes of the American people voting Democrats out of office. The best way to get Democrats out of office is for them not to accomplish anything for the American people. But as Representative Jayapal was saying in that interview, that the Progressive Caucus is very much in lockstep. That not only them, there were 11 senators in the Senate who have come forward and said, we only voted for the bipartisan bill because we were assured that both bills would be passed together. They would continue to be linked. That one bill doesn't get voted on without the other. And that's the way it was sold to the Democrats. It was the way it was sold to progressives. You had progressives in the Senate who voted for the bipartisan bill, even though it is a massive corporate handout, because they were told the bigger bill will be tied to it. Both will get passed in together. And now you have the right-wing Democrats trying to claim, no, we got the one, let's just pass it and go ahead with that. And that is a loss for Democrats. I mean, there are good things in that bill. That is a massive infrastructure bill. It includes hard infrastructure. It includes stuff like broadband. There are good things in that bill, just as Representative Jayapal said in that interview on PBS NewsHour. There are good things in that bill. She's not saying she doesn't like the bill. That is way short of what we need. And that's certainly way short of the massive FDR 2.0 agenda Biden claimed to have going into office. As she said, Democrats ran on that agenda. What the progressives are standing up for is the Democratic agenda. They're standing up for the Biden agenda. Biden is not a progressive, and he's not on the side of the progressives. But they are standing up for his agenda because his agenda was way more robust than what has been done so far. Nothing has been done so far. And the right-wing Democrats, they're standing in the way of the Democratic agenda. For Republicans, this bipartisan bill is a win-win. You have a small group of Republicans in the Senate who voted to get it passed in the Senate. As I said, it's looking like no Republicans will vote for it in the House. However, if it does get passed, Republicans are going to go back to their states and brag about how, look what I did for you. I did this for you. That's not true, but they will do it anyway. Just like Republicans who had zero of which voted for the COVID relief bill went back to their states and said, I did this for you. Look what we got done. They didn't vote for it, but they're campaigning on it. They're bragging about it to their constituents because so many of the constituents don't pay attention to who votes for what. As far as they know, this Republican representative they have did do something to get this bill passed. Not true, but for Republicans, the bipartisan bill is a win-win. One, it severely lowers what Biden accomplishes. Two, they can run on it. They can say it's a bipartisan bill. We got this infrastructure bill passed. Look at all the infrastructure work going on in the state. You need to reelect me. They will run on it. They will campaign on it. They will brag about it. But it also decreases what Biden accomplishes if all we pass is the bipartisan bill. And this video is Ayanna Pressley reiterating the same thing that Jayapal did.
Joe Biden here in New York City ahead of his first speech at the UN General Assembly since taking office. The president who ran on bipartisanship, his ability to get both sides to the table, now faces what you'd have to call open warfare between members of his own party. And it threatens to derail his agenda. So-called moderates and progressives battling over his signature infrastructure bill. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying tonight that she is a no on the bipartisan bill that already passed the Senate if the larger Democratic-only bill hasn't passed by next week. Joe Manchin today digging in his heels, calling on Democrats to slow their roll on a bill that he thinks has too high a price tag.
And it's September 27th is coming up next week. Is it possible that this bill could pass by then?
The deadline, I've said this before, I think you know where I feel on that. And the bottom line is, if whatever you're going to do, get it right. And if there's not enough clarity, then you need to get clarity.
But you want it delayed till next year, right?
No, I didn't. You know what I said? I said, let's wait and see whatever we need. We'll have a good idea.
Okay, well, so an impasse, open warfare, right? Ayanna Pressley was blunt last week when she told me who she thinks the real obstructionists are in all of this.
When it comes to Manchin and Sinema, let the record reflect who the real obstructionists are. I think progressives are often maligned and vilified for, sitting for our advancing, seeking to advance bold progressive policies, which are the people's policies, which are in fact the president's agenda.
And that was the Ayanna Pressley part. As she said, this reconciliation bill is the Democratic agenda. If it doesn't get passed, the Democratic agenda doesn't get passed. We're already coming to the end of September. We've got to raise the debt ceiling so we can continue to operate. We've got to pass a budget, which is not going to happen, or a budget deal to kick the can down the road and deal with the budget again in December. And those things have to pass. But this reconciliation bill is the Democratic agenda. And Joe Manchin is full of BS. His claim that we need to figure out what we need. You don't know what's needed in this country. You've been in office for as many years as you have, and you don't know what working people need. You claim to be in touch with the people of your state. West Virginia, one of the poorest states in the nation, and you don't know the kind of things that would help those people out, that would help their lives out. Joe Manchin is full of crap. And that's because he works for one group, that's donors. He is one of the politicians in office who works solely for donors. There are plenty of Democrats that do that, and there's no Republicans who don't. As far as the right wing, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they work for donors. They don't work for you or me. They don't care about you or me because we're not giving them money. They work for donors, and to claim that we need to wait till next year or later and figure out what we need because I've been in office and I have no clue what the average working American needs. That may be true because Joe Manchin himself is rich and he comes from a rich family in a very poor state. So he's lived an exceedingly charmed life. But it's garbage if he's ever talked to his constituents to say that he has no idea what they need. That child care, that elder care, that climate change intervention, to say that, well, I don't know if we need that, is asinine. So what we have is progressives who are actually trying to help uphold Biden's agenda. $3.5 trillion is the negotiated position. Progressives were at $6 trillion when we started talking about the needs of this country. It got negotiated down to $3.5 trillion. All these people saying that progressives aren't willing to compromise, we're at the compromise position. What progressives wanted was cut nearly in half to get to where we're at. And now you have the right-wing Democrats trying to cut it further because they're trying to blow up the Democratic agenda. And they're threatening to get nothing accomplished. So that next year in 2022, they guarantee themselves getting booted out of office. And then when they get booted out of office, they will again blame the progressives, rather than looking at themselves and saying, well, we did kind of blow up our own party's agenda. It makes sense for people to vote us out. That's where we're at. We have the two bills. One's already passed the Senate. The other still hasn't been completely fleshed out. The bipartisan bill that passed the Senate was supposed to be done earlier than it was, but it got delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and eventually passed. And now that the reconciliation bill has to be put together, you have the right-wing Democrats saying, oh, no, it's taking too much time. It's taking too much time. We need to cut it off now and just vote for the one we want. We need to vote for the corporate handouts, and that's it. They're trying to rush through to get very little and to give a large win to Republicans. Because the Republicans, as I said, what their goal is to keep Joe Biden's success level as low as possible and to get something passed so that they can brag on it, even if a very minuscule number of Republicans voted for it. But that's the two bills. That's where we're at. You have right-wing Democrats trying to stop the Biden agenda, progressives trying to push the Biden agenda, and the lines are getting blurred because of corporate politicians and corporate news media personnel. That's where we're at. And I just wanted to explain that as thoroughly as I could. Hopefully I did a decent enough job. Thanks for watching. If you like the videos, please give me a like. If you've not subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel to help the channel grow. And again, thanks for watching my videos.